What's up, Weekend Warriors? Welcome to week two, 2025, the new edition of the podcast. I'm back, your commish, after a wild week one. And let's not beat around the bush. I had a bad week. So I went 2-3 with my fantasy predictions on the pod. I went 0-2 in my NFL picks, and I scored the least amount of points in the league, and I'm starting off the season 0-1. That's the bad news. So the good news, maybe we get a little context in there, and it'll feel a little better. So let's try to give you some of that context. Off the jump, it was a bad week for football across the board. I think with the lack of preseason games, it's coming more and more prominent now that the first week is a little bit of a dud. Scoring was down, a lot of unders hit. Fantasy scoring was down also. So, maybe a little acclimation period there. For instance, somebody on my team named Jamar Chase had 2 catches for 23 yards. I'm hoping that is an anomaly, or the league is going to be different than I think it'll be. Let's put it that way. So last year I started 0-1 and then I won 13 in a row. I don't think that's the recipe to win the league, but it's room for optimism for people like me and room for optimism for others that may have started slow. So take solace in that fact. On the flip side, this league has had a history of first to worst, last to first, kind of a total reordering of the standings. And it would just be so poetic. My brother, who came in last year, came in first the year before that. And now this week one, highest score in the league and in first place. So just, the seesaw is going back and forth here. And it's okay to overreact on some things that maybe have some other warts and blemishes on them, but maybe slow your roll, take a little couple breaths here. That's what I'm here, and that's what I'm going to preach today. Take some breaths, relax. It's week one, and try to roll with the punches as we head into week two. So that's my spiel. I mentioned I was 2-3 with my picks in the fantasy matchups. I had Otley over Booty. Booty knocks down Otley. We'll talk about Booty's team here in a little bit, but Otley worthy on Friday night was a bad start. Texted me, you jinxed me, you picked me to win. I knew I was doomed from the start, so maybe we'll pick you to lose this week just to maybe give you some good juju coming your way. Chris over Kevin, that was one I got right. Chris took care of business, so I'm 1-1 there. I picked Terry over Malone, 2-1. Terry took care of Malone. Brett over Jake, I was incorrect. We mentioned Jake won earlier. Brett was the second highest scorer in the league. Stop me if you've heard that story before. It was a back and forth. Zay Flowers, Derrick Henry, Monday Night Football, and Brett unfortunately could not get it done. Brett, on the flip side, you have a good team, it appears. Team showed up. Kittle being injured. We'll talk about it. But a loss for Brett coming out of the gate. And then I picked myself over my dad. And that was the other one I got wrong. So 2-3. My dad really was carried by Josh Allen and Bijan Robinson. We'll talk about his team here in a little bit as well. He starts off 1-0. High score of the week was my brother, $25 to Jake. So congratulations to him. And then the NFL picks. Thursday Night Football, over 47.5. I'm giving the Thursday Night Kings some grace on this one because I really, really, really do think it was the right pick, wrong result. Before that lightning delay, basically at halftime, the over had hit essentially, and then that happened, and not another point was scored from like 8 minutes into the third quarter. So that's a loss, and a loss is a loss. I'll own it. I think my process was sound, and I think I'm going to get back in the win column Thursday night tonight. We'll see. And then Saints 6.5. I just really thought that was going to be an ugly one. And Kyler was sick and coming into the game. Even Sunday, I was feeling better and better about it. Saints had a chance to tie it and force overtime, but unfortunately, 6.5 loses by 0.5 point. A couple of bad losses there, some bad beats for the commish, but 0-2 all the same. I own it, and we will strive to be better. Don't let me get hot. All right. Wanted to talk about the waiver wire before we get into week 2 matchups. Waiver wire wise, I got to give a shout out here to Booty. I think that coming out of the draft and some of the news on Rice and his suspension hitting right away, he also had Addison, his suspension served right away. So Booty had some blemishes. Then the McCaffrey news comes out. Maybe he's going to be out. All of a sudden, I think Booty's got probably the worst team in our league. And I said he had to get wins early. He comes out. McCaffrey quells the concerns of the injury. He's a bell cow. He has a great week. Booty wins week 1, which is exactly what you need to do when you have a team made up like his that's going to get stronger later in the season. And oh, by the way, he did something else I think is very smart. He went hard on the wire. Hollywood Brown, $24. Yes, it's a lot, but he also is the perfect player for Booty. Being the Rice owner, Mahomes has no one else to throw to. Maybe Worthy will be back, but great pickup for Booty. All right, I'm going to stop saying good things about your Boots, but I don't want to pump you up too much. But I will say your team is on the rise. You've made some good moves, and look out for Chris in the second half of the season. Really, other moves, I thought my dad got a really good value on Quentin Johnson for $6. Valone spent up for Booty, $10. No one else. That's funny. I just talked about Booty. Kayshon Booty. Spent up for Kayshon Booty, $10. No one else bid on him, but Valone, congratulations, you got him. And then Brett is trying to plug his hole at tight end by picking up both Juwan Johnson, and I think he got Brenton Strange. He did. So that sucks about the Kittle news. Otherwise, pretty slow week on the waivers. Week 1, last year was Jordan Mason. The year before that was Puka Nacua. And I just, I've seen $40, $50 bids, whatever it may be. A little bit slower this year, but either way, some decent pickups here on the wire, and we'll see what happens in weeks to come. So, into the matchups. Again, breathe deep breaths. We're going to talk about some people that I think are due for some positive regression. A guy like, I'll bring up A.J. Brown, week 1. Some games he disappears. They run the ball. They don't need him. If that happens in week 7, it's a blip on the radar. If it happens week 1, it's red alert. So, got to kind of just factor that in. The first matchup I have written down. You know what? Before I get into the matchups, I want to get this off my chest. I have a really, really, really good read on the line tonight, and I really feel good about this pick. The Thursday Night King is gonna lay a nice wager on this pick for the people. Green Bay throttled the Lions at home last week, and they stay at home for a short week on Thursday Night Football. Washington beat up on a below average Giants team that just looked inept on offense. Now has to travel not across the country, but a pretty decent way across the country to Green Bay in their stadium. Micah Parsons. Green Bay has got crazy Super Bowl odds now. They're up there with Philly for the NFC, and people are high on them. And somehow this line is 3.5. It should be 5.5, 6.5. If people think that Green Bay is going to be, I love Washington tonight. I think Jaden's going to come out and be Jaden. He's a weird guy in like these kind of games too, where he just kind of Supermans it and breaks spreads. And I think they can win outright. I think if they don't, I think that they will cover the spread. Give me the 3.5. Washington 3.5 is my favorite pick of the year so far, and it's going to get me back on track for Thursday Night Football. All right, we'll save my other pick a little bit, but we're going to get into it here. I had a bunch of matchups this week that could be matchups of the week, but I had to just pick one. So keep that in mind. And the other thing I wanted to say was there's a lot of teams this week. There's multiple matchups this week. We'll leave it at that are 0-1 teams squaring off against each other. And in a league like this where 4 teams make the playoffs out of 10, starting 0-2 is totally not a death knell. But it isn't good either. You want to get off on good footing. So it's an important matchup for those teams that are facing each other that are 0-1. Spoiler alert, I'm in one of those matchups, and we'll talk about that shortly. But the first matchup I have written down is Jake versus my dad. And I will say it's a Harding matchup, and this was a candidate for the matchup of the week. 2 1-0 teams. It is not the matchup of the week, however. But I think Jake's team is going to be good. I'm just come out of the gate and say that. Saquon, Kyron, and Kamara is a great four-pack, and he also has Bill Merritt and Sampson. That's a pretty strong running back core. And then he's got BTJ, who had a down week last week, but he's got Zay, who had a great week last week. And then he's got Diggs and MHJ. Another solid four-pack there of wide receivers. The part I didn't like the most about Jake's team was Mahomes and Kelsey, because I just think that at this point they're both a little overrated. That being said, now with the Worthy injury, that's worse for Mahomes for sure. But Kelsey should be necessary. So we'll see what happens there. But he's got May in his lineup, so maybe Jake's losing a little bit of faith in Mahomes with some of the injury stuff. But I do like Drake May. I think he's solid. On the other side, I said it in my precursor here. Allen and Bijan pretty much carried my dad's team. He got limited use from Harvey. Aaron Jones split with Mason. London got injured and underperformed. Devontae Adams didn't do much. The one bonus here for Dean is that ETN looks to be the guy. Bigsby out of town. That could be the steal of the draft, which is funny because he was the worst pick in fantasy last year. So I like Dean's team to get maybe a little stronger as the season goes on. Travis Hunter get a little bit more acclimated. RJ Harvey get a little bit more acclimated. But this week, I'm going to pick my brother. I think that BTJ will bounce back. Saquon should be leaned on in that game. Kyron in Tennessee. And some of these guys I just mentioned, like Hunter, Andrews, Aaron Jones, they're fringe starters. They're definitely starters. But, with London being banged up, I got to see it again from ETN. I'm going to give my brother the edge here in week 2. All right, moving on to the next matchup. Also a candidate for matchup of the week, 2 1-0 teams, Booty versus Chris. We talked about Booty. I can't say anything more good about Booty. I don't want his head to get too big, but we haven't talked about Chris. Chris just took care of business last week. Some solid performances, but also some underwhelming performances. Higgins and Collins pretty much did nothing. Sutton and Genty, did enough. And, Chris got a win. It wasn't a sexy win, but it was a win. And, this week, I think Nico's going to bounce back. I think Higgins and that whole Bengals team is going to bounce back. And for Booty's side, I see Lamar. He had a shootout last week against Buffalo. This week they play Cleveland at home. Maybe he doesn't have to be Superman. He can score four touchdowns in the first half also. But, that combined with, Debo had a great week last week. Maybe he doesn't have as good of a week. Tyreek Hill is 1 quarter away from pulling an Antonio Brown and stripping down on the field and walking off. So he does make me nervous. He's a player I would overreact against potentially. But I think you see where I'm leaning here. The Booty's team was on the rise. I've said it. But I think Chris is going to get it done and start 2-0, shake and bake over the mad scientist. That brings me to my third matchup, which even now I'm almost thinking of flipping and making it the match for the week, but I'm going to stick with what I have written down. It's only week 2. Don't get crazy. Malone versus Otley. They have a little rivalry going on in this league. Otley was mad I picked him to win, so we'll see what happens here. But, the Worthy thing really hurt him. He has a good lineup between Bowers. Olave could be a little bit of a steal. Evans and Lamb, super solid. Josh Jacobs, we scored a touchdown in like 9 straight games, something crazy. He has him tonight against Malone. It's got to scare him. On Malone's side, weak at quarterback. Caleb going in a 10-man league as your only quarterback. It's a little dicey, but he does have Justin Fields, and he does have Garrett Wilson. So, the Wilson and Fields connection, can that get it done? Malone's already seen enough. He's got Fields in his lineup. He's rolling with it as of this minute. A warning for Malone is Ken Walker. He's another guy. Don't overreact, but, he's pretty much splitting with Charbonnet, who Malone also has, but they're going to steal fantasy points from one another. I think better days to come for McConkey. I think you saw Jefferson start to get a little bit more in sync there with JJ as that game went on. I think better days to come for him. Sunday Night Football against Atlanta. You're happy. I'm taking Malone. I think the agitator gets it done here in week 2. I think Jonathan Taylor could be another very good pick this year. And I think McConkey's going to bounce back. And I think that Malone's going to take him down. Give me Chris here versus Otley. Which brings me to the matchup of the week. Brett and Terry. And this is the matchup of the week because I think both of these teams are very, very good. I think that Brett's team is, if Kittle was still healthy, he could have the best team in the league. Without Kittle, it's a little tougher. He's got to make a decision at tight end. But Henry could be the RB1 this year. You saw what he did. He hasn't slowed down. Burrow had a horrible week for Brett, and he still scored 140 points. Hubbard, solid. Amon Ra and Smith and Jigba, two guys that are going to get a ton of targets and catches. And then Egbuka looks like he's the real deal. Javonte in his lineup right now, a guy that seemed to be rejuvenated for Dallas. He's on my dynasty team. Shout out. So Terry on the other side, he's always good. He's always good. He's got a solid team. We mentioned Jaden. I think he has a nice night tonight, but it is a tough matchup. James Cook and James Conner, two Jameses that are very, very solid. And then Puka and Neighbors. Whew, two solid wide receivers that, Puka is just so good. And Neighbors, he's a game breaker, man. You never want to go against Malik Neighbors because he can have 200 yards. Wait till they make a quarterback change. If it's ever Jameis Winston, I think Malik Neighbors would break fantasy, but we'll see. So Pearsall, maybe no Purdy. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe Mac Jones is better. Tyrone Tracy, DJ Moore, Jalen Warren. These are all team players that Terry has. Keon Coleman, Ramondre Stevenson, Dak Prescott. This guy's bench, okay? Look out for Terry. He's deep, and he's got a good team. That being said, I'm taking Brett in this one. The man just needs to, not play the highest score. Just give him a break, fantasy guys. Look, Brett, I'm trying to help you here. I think Brett's going to take down Terry. I think Brett's team's going to be a problem for people. And I think he's going to be near the top of the standings after this week. So give me Brett. All right, me versus Kev. I already gave my spiel. I started 0-1 last year, and then I went on a run, okay? Very difficult to replicate. I have a lot of guys on my team that I think will get stronger as the year goes on. There were mixed opinions about Hampton. Najee will get more involved, but, Hampton didn't look that great. I'm still a believer. I think that he just played the Chiefs, I think, is my hope. Travion, another guy, going to start slow, and should be better. But listen, Jamar Chase, come on, brother. 2 for 24, that's going to hurt. Bo Nix looked like a rookie last week, so I need him to kind of right the ship. There were some bright spots. Metcalf had a nice week, but Jameson Williams, George Pickens, both these guys struggled. And were outscored by guys like Keenan Allen and guys like Jordan Mason on my bench. So I'm not making a lot of changes. I don't think it's time to hit the panic button. I just think there's some guys that need to turn the corner. Tyler Warren looked good in his first week, and we're going to continue to roll with him. The only thing that I am scared about is that Kev has a good team and is someone else who is due for positive regression. That's the one place where this can kind of go a little wonky because Kev's team scares me, especially this week. Kyler versus the Panthers. The Panthers suck. Jahmyr Gibbs in a bounce-back situation at home. He's going to score this week. Devon Achane. Somehow the Dolphins are favored, and my strategy, always bet on the team that looked the worst last week. The Dolphins are favored at home. That is not my pick because I cannot bet the Dolphins. I refuse to do it, but that goes with my usual process and logic, and I think Achane could have a nice week. A.J. Brown, positive regression candidate. Terry McLaurin, positive regression candidate. McMillan, also in that category. So really the only guy who looked really good last week for Kev was Breece Hall. So Kev had a down week. I think I could be in the Brett category. I think I'm going to score a lot of points this week. I think Kevin is too. And I just hope I'm not a high-scoring losing team. We'll see what happens. I am going to pick myself to win. I do think Kevin's team is strong if it can stay healthy. Injury question marks, maybe A.J. Brown, Devon Achane, couple guys that are banged up sometimes. Achane's going to be force-fed the ball there in Miami. And the Eagles have to get the ball to A.J. Brown this week. So I'm hoping my Bengals, Chase Brown and Jamar Chase, get it done. I think I'm sticking with Knicks as of this minute. I hope he can do enough for me. So I'm picking myself over Kevin. My other pick, how should I say it? I'll say atypical, but I got to go with the pick I think is the best. And it's a Monday night football game. I said usually bet on the team that looked the worst last week. That would be the Dolphins in that category. Another team that's a candidate for that is Houston. They look terrible. The Bucs stole a win from Atlanta. They're still not healthy on the offensive line. They're still not healthy with Godwin, some other folks. They didn't look that strong. They probably should have lost to Atlanta, or at least it was going to overtime, but Koo missed that kick. Houston looked awful against the Rams, and they're a 2.5-point favorite at home on Monday Night Football. Their offensive line is a sham, an abomination. Stroud's running for his life. The Texans get it done at home on Monday Night Football. Lay the number. Take the Texans. You heard it here first. Good luck, guys. We got to bounce back. Commish out.